Hey, hey, everybody, I'm Bill. I'm a drug addict.
I know.
It's good to be here with a bunch of drug addicts. And first off, what I'd like to mention is on January the 4th was the anniversary of the death of my dear friend Ed Moore. And some of you may have known Ed. Some of you that know me over in the Netherlands, you know me because of Ed. And Ed was the guy that brought my sponsor and I, Jay, over there to speak around. And Ed and Monica's on here too. They were really influential in starting cocaine in us in the Netherlands and spread like wildfire. Really exciting adventure. Watch that. So I just like to see his name, keep him alive in the room. Because what a character he was. He was really something special. And so I've got 20 or 25 minutes, and I'm not going to bore you with my drug-a-log. It's probably the same as yours, kind of repetitive and pathetic. And we all know about that. And I spent some time in mental institutions and jails, and I got clean and sober in March of 1985. 39 years clean and sober. I don't know about you, but I am very impressed with that. It's like I didn't have any idea I was going to be around here this long. And what happens when you stay sober and clean that long is you get old. And there's two ways to look at getting old. You could go, oh my God, it's almost over. Or you can look at it from the standpoint of I made it because it wasn't looking very good. When I got clean in 1985, I had bad cirrhosis and I had hepatitis C. And at 30 years sober, I had a liver transplant. So 8 years ago, this coming February, will be 8 years since they saved my life again, and I got a liver transplant. So I would highly recommend that none of you start shooting drugs because it'll kill you. And I did a lot of that. So in 85, I was 37 years old. I was married, a second marriage, and I had two kids. And my daughter at the time was 3 years old, and my son was 4 months old. He was born on Christmas Day of 1984. He just turned 40 years old. I find that hard to believe, but there he is. And he's getting bald like me, too. He lost his hair, which I'm grateful for because he used to make fun of me. And I was up all night. You ever been up all night?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there's nothing more depressing than when that sun comes up. Because by this time in my life, I'm a vampire. I don't come out during the day. And the sun came up that morning, and my little daughter got up, and she was happy to see that Daddy was up, and she crawled up in my lap, and it just broke my heart. I think that's what happened. I just realized that I'm not a husband, I'm not a father, I'm a nothing, I'm a loser. And the reason I was up all night is there's certain spiritual truths, and one of them is alcohol plus money equals cocaine. And I believe that God gave alcoholics cocaine so we could drink more. That's what it's for. And I know some of you just did cocaine by itself. You have no idea what you're missing if you weren't drinking. It's like, so uh, that morning, like a gangster, I called my mother. And my mother had been in Al-Anon for 30 years by that time. My dad got sober in 1954. And those people in Al-Anon are organized and prepared and focused. And she came and got me, loaded me up in a car, and put me in a recovery place for 35 days. And after that was done, they let me out. Like they just let us out like we're okay, you know. And where do we end up? We end up in one of the A's. It's AA or CA or NA or one of the A's. This is the world's aftercare program. This is where we are. We become the counselors. You know, those of us that have been in mental institutions and jails and been married a half a dozen times, we become the counselors. Like, think about this. I've been married 3 times and in a mental institution twice, and people ask me for relationship advice. Yeah, just give it to them. I figure, hell, you can't hurt them. They're already here with us, right? But we become the counselors. We're the ones that help people. You think of this, that all of us that are here, we're in a program in an organization where people's lives are saved every day. And the mechanism that's used for that is us. It's us. We carry the message. I don't think it springs forth from us. I think it flows through us. This is a spiritually based program. And what I would like to talk about is that recovery program, where we are. It says, big book in page 85, it's about the 10th step. It says in there that the only thing that's going to save us is the maintenance of our spiritual condition. The only thing that's going to give us some kind of quality of life and certainly keep us clean and sober, but also maybe some intimacy in our relationships, maybe a focus, a purpose for our existence, give us a purpose in life. The only thing that's going to do that is this spiritual condition that we need to maintain. So if any of you are new out there, you have a job, and that is to get a spiritual condition, because you probably don't have one. When I got here, I did not have one. And I've been here almost 40 years, and I can look back over those 4 decades and see the phases that I've gone through in developing some kind of spiritual condition. Because I believe what we suffer from, we don't have special thinking. We're emotionally immature. Most of us got loaded through the growing up process of the years, and we get here, and now we're going to grow up now, and the chances of us doing that and looking good are really slim. This is going to take some time. I'm not going to read a book and work a few steps and then everything's going to be okay. There's a process here. Getting that spiritual condition is going to take some time, and the way we learn is through experience, not through intellectual understanding or knowledge. That's good. It's important. It's good to know stuff, you know. But having faith and having reliance on that faith may be 2 different things, right? So a couple of things happened to me when I walked into recovery. The first one is probably the most important. I just liked it right away. I got a kick out of you right away. I got the joke right away. I heard the music right away. It's not everybody's story. But I walked into this AA meeting, specifically my first meeting was an AA meeting, and I walked in there in the summer of '85, and the room was packed and everybody was dressed up trying to hook up. The name of the meeting was the Gong Show, right? And they were hooting and hollering, nicknames are flying around. It was, a lot of people said it wasn't really an AA meeting. I went to it for 20 years. It was perfect for me. I walked into a room that was perfect for me. I'm very grateful for that. I mean, I left that night and I'm driving home and I thought, you know, this may not be so bad. You know, I wasn't expecting you. I didn't know this was going to be fun. Did you? When you walked into recovery, did you walk in and think, boy, this will be a good time? I had no idea it was going to be funny. I didn't know I was going to be laughing my ass off. And for 40 years, I've had a hell of a good time around here. I've had ups and downs and stuff, but I've never been bored. And I can tell you, if you're sitting out there tonight in this meeting and you're bored, it's because you're boring. It's not us. It's like, it's just a never-ending font of weirdness. And it's kept my attention all these years. I've always been able to feel the energy of this. Very fortunate that I'm grateful for that. The second thing that happened is I asked a guy to help me, and he actually did, which doesn't always happen. After a couple of weeks of banging around in meetings, I saw this guy, and he was around a lot, and he seemed like he was really connected because he was. He was 6 years sober, and I asked him for help, and he said something that first night. He told me, he says, go home and read the doctor's opinion. Make notes in the margin of what you agree with and what you don't. Be at my house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and we'll discuss it. And for some reason, I just did that. And I think the bottom that we hit is the collapse of the alibi system. Because we have a story, right? We have a story about why we are the way we are. It's about them. They did this to us, and it's those motherfuckers. Where you can't be sober and not know who they are. We all have a they. It was dad, it was mom, it was the government, it was the Department of Motor Vehicles. Who the hell are they to tell me whether I can drive or not? We have a story that we tell. And for some reason, that story collapses and new information can come in. And with that night, I just did what he told me to do, which was not my regular way of being. And I read my little assignment, I made my notes, and I showed up at the stranger's house Thursday at 5 o'clock, and he let me in and sat me down in the living room. And he didn't trust me that I did it, and he had me sit there and read it to him out loud. I've had the same sponsor for 39 years. I should have fired him several times, but he needs me now. and, and we've gone around the world, including where you are, including the Hague and in Amsterdam and Copenhagen and England and New Zealand. And we've done workshops on sponsorship and retreats and spoken, shot off our mouth all over the damn world. And rule number one when you're sponsoring people is make sure they read the book. Don't trust them. Read it yourself. Maybe it'll help you out. Maybe that's what this is for, is to help you, not them specifically. And now I'm doing it on Zoom. If I have to read War Fever Ran High in that New England town one more time, I don't know. It's just amazing. And
I'm going to put that on you. Now,
so I went to his house every week and we read another chapter in the book. And he told me, he says, my job is to guide you through the process of the 12 steps that you may have a spiritual awakening and maybe you'll never drink or use again. That happens here. He says, I'd be happy to sit here and listen to you tell me what you think your problems are so that you will not share about them in the meetings. The meetings are not about how your day went. They're about recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction. And I told him down there at the Ilano Club, they're breaking that rule right and left. Should we go tell them? He goes, no, it's a safe place. You can pretty much do whatever you want. I'm just describing to you my recovery process, the way I believe about it. So fortunately, I've got a guy that was willing to express his opinion and give me some advice because I'm new and I need some good advice. So here's what I think's going on. The spiritual condition, I wrote some stuff down here a few years ago and thought it and looked at my history and what is the spiritual condition made up of? The first thing that I wanted to know from me sitting in his living room that very first meeting is whether I thought I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. Now for me, that was an easy answer. Because I was pretty beat up physically, I was in bad shape, and I was done. As it turns out, evidently I was done so far, and I could say yes, I'm powerless. I can't fix me. I need some help. I get that. 39 years later, I think that powerless everything, don't you? Have you tried to hurt yourself into the political turmoil in the world, or tried to get your partner that you live with to change so that you can be happy? How successful have you been with that? I've been an absolute failure at that. I'm utterly powerless over you. You insist upon living your own life, and it pisses me off at my, Nobody from Washington, D.C. has ever called me and what I thought should happen there. It's like I'm powerless over everything around me. I don't think I need any power. I don't think I require power. But there's something about my egoic situation that wants to assert itself and protect the persona it's created about how I'm perceived. I think I evidently what I believe is that things outside myself need to be different in order for me to be okay. And they don't change, and I suffer. And I keep asserting myself, and it doesn't work. I think I'm utterly powerless. I think something else is running the show. It certainly isn't me. There's this false sense of authorship that somehow I think I'm creating my reality. I just don't believe that anymore. I still struggle with it, but I don't think that's the way things operate. I think I'm utterly powerless. So the first pillar of spiritual condition is powerlessness, and whether or not we really believe that. Now, any mystical path that you go down, if you start reading books and listening to spiritual speakers and They all talk about personal powerlessness. It's not just AA. They all talk about it, that we are not running the show. They asked the Dalai Lama, what's the ultimate spiritual truth? And he said, all is well. And he pauses because he knows you don't believe that, and he repeats it very slowly. All is well. And it just doesn't look well to me. But I believe he's right. I think my primary struggle is that I think I have power and I keep asserting myself. So powerless is the first pillar of spiritual condition. Then the second step happens. I need to align myself with the power. Well, I don't believe in God. So what? You're not God. That's all you need to know. Some people will tell you that you have to have a God. No, you don't. All you have to recognize is it's not you, right? Something else, clearly, it's just unfolding. Things are just unfolding right in front of me. I am not unfolding them. So I pray to that, whatever that is, right? Try to stay out of the concept business. Then the third step happens. The third step's interesting. It says I'm gonna make a decision to turn my life and will over to clearly what already has it anyway. I think it was nice of them to lead me to believe that I actually have some say in the matter. Well, I've been withholding myself from the totality of all things long enough. I'm going to acquiesce now and allow you to take me. Thank you very much. Where's my trophy? You know, like, you know, I just think that we'd have these windy discussions about the difference between my will and God's will, as if that's possible. And that I'm going to have a battle of wills with the power that drives the entire universe. I don't think there's any difference between my will and God's will. God's will is what's happening right now. What else could it possibly be? And I have trouble with right now, so I'm looking for an alternative, and there is none. This is it. This is what I get. So I make up fantasy lands, like someday in the future it's going to be better because right now isn't good. And all we have is right now. This is it. This is the present moment. This is what we get. What life and will is the third step talking about? It's the inventory, isn't it? The end result of living a life with seeming power. I have resentments, I have fears, and I have broken sexual relationships. That's what I bring to you. And I make a list of that. And in the fifth step, I tell this stranger that I was sitting in his living room, here's my life. This is it. I'm pooped. You take it. And what's the lesson in the inventory process is the second pillar of spiritual condition is I have to stop blaming other people and institutions for my problems. High school is over. It's time for little Bill to grow up, to take responsibility for his own behavior, for his own emotional state. It's time now. He's not that profoundly neurotic. He's just like a teenager. He looks like he's grown up, but he's got the emotional development of a rather disturbed 16-year-old that's full of rage and anger and has no idea that's because he's so frightened of life. He doesn't know that yet. That's going to take some time before he really realizes that. How long? 10 years, maybe. Not next week, but he's going to get some input. What we're looking for in that inventory is the fourth column is what are my faults and mistakes. That's what we're looking for. Now, on that first inventory I did at 6 months sober, I had an experience. I realized that my life had changed. That's a profound experience, right? But I didn't know that fourth column wasn't very big. My sponsor helped me with some stuff. The one I did at 10 years sober, it was all fourth column. By that time, I knew when I destroyed my life at 10 years sober, who you blame for that, right? And I knew then because I'd done some work. I'd sponsored some people. I'd done all that, but I knew it was me, and it was shameful at what I'd done with my life at 10 years sober. Something happens between 8 and 12 years sober. People talk about the second surrender. They don't tell you about the third one and the fourth one and the fifth one, though. They don't want you to run screaming down the street, it's a life of confronting my ego and see what drives me, what drives me. Then you want me to go make amends to these people that I resent in order to rid myself of the resentment. And I don't want to do that. It scares the hell out of me. I just want to move on with my life now. Forget about what happened in the past. And AA and CA doesn't believe in that. From the Oxford group, we got the idea of making amends, of cleaning up the past, to free ourselves of that. You want to feel better about yourself? Make the amends. That's where the transformation really occurs. What do we learn from the amends process? When we do that 9-step, this is when transformation, when I go to somebody that I don't ever want to see again and I look them right in the eye and I say the words that need to be said, when I turn and walk away from that experience, I am changed right then and there. No waiting. This is a cathartic experience. The action of doing that will change who you are as a person. It has certainly done that to me. And what's the lesson? The third pillar of spiritual condition is nothing was ever personal. No one was ever doing anything to me. They're just doing what they do. And I happen to be in the blast radius of their behavior. And this is what changes our story. It doesn't mean that the perpetrators didn't do something. It means that the motivation I gave them wasn't the motivation that really happened. So the story, I heard a speaker one time say, my God, I was so wrong. And I've had that experience when I went about the amends process. It changed the story. Sometimes you're in my blast radius. I'm not focused on you. I'm just doing what I do. If you meet an asshole out there in the world, you can bet that they don't really want to be that way. They just can't help themselves. They're not awake. They're sound asleep. I've been sound asleep most of my life. And the people that I was blaming for what they had done to me, why was I even there in the first place? Why was I with those people? Why was I doing what I was doing? What brought me there? It changes the story. Nothing was ever personal. When those three things come together, powerlessness, I got to stop the blaming and I'm working on it. And then I begin to realize that nothing was ever personal. That is the collapse of the egoic structure of my personality. This is not necessarily a happy moment, right? And I can tell you that kind of self-awareness without humor is depression, right? Sometimes the appropriate emotional response is depression. On the spiritual path, we all reach a point where we stand there and we say, oh my God, it's me. It was never them. It's me. I am the source of all the chaos in my life. That becomes real, right? Now, steps 1 through 9 are about 10% of the program. It's not the work. This is Sober 101. This is the bare minimum. This is what we have to do to create a message with some depth and weight so that we can begin the work. And the work in AA or CA is in 10, 11, and 12. That's where we live. That's where 90% of the program exists. The 10th step is about making amends in the present moment. I get it now. I get it now. I don't have to work on it, write inventory all the time. I step on your foot, I turn around and say, I'm sorry, excuse me. You know, I don't have to go down and share at the noon meeting, then write 3 pages of inventory and call my sponsor and 3 other people, track you down 2 weeks later and say, I'm sorry. I get it now. I'm beginning to get it now. In meditation, in the 11th step, 10 and 11 are joined at the hip. In meditation, I can watch myself think. I can focus my mind on the breath coming in and out of my nose. And you will notice if you do that, that the egoic mind, the thinking mind that carries within it the persona of who you think you are, doesn't like being in the present moment because there's nothing for it to do. There's never anything wrong in the present moment. Things just are as they are, right? It wants to be in the past or in the future where it can work on stuff. You know, it's not the enemy. It's not trying to kill me. It needs me for transportation, right? It's part of me. It's not some alien creature that has invaded me. It's part of the human experience. In the spiritual path, you're just forced to look at it for what it really is. And you notice it has wandered away from the breath and you gently bring it back. This is a game-changing experience. Evidently, I don't have to go where it wants to take me. Evidently, now that I can see it, there seems to be a consciousness within me that can watch the other one operate. That's very profound and very simple, right? Anybody can do this. Very blue collar. You don't have to go sit in a cave for 6 months like Ramana Maharshi, you know? It's like you can just do it in your living room, right? That's the 4th pillar of spiritual condition is self-awareness as compared to self-obsession. Being able to watch yourself move through life. Developing the skill of the watcher. Developing that essence within you that's deeper than your conscious mind. Getting a larger voice on the committee in your head. My sponsor says that you can't
Yeah.
stay sober on 11 and a half steps. That meditation's in the step. You got to do it. It's a great tool. It's a great tool. Matter of fact, meditation will enhance your prayer life. You know, the final pillar is the thing that's missing in us. Now, I get here to recovery, and I've got character defects. I've got stuff, right? But I'm not stupid. I can see the character defects. I know that I'm arrogant. I know that I'm pompous. I know that I overreact to things. I don't want to be that way. Sometimes I can't help myself, but I don't know what's missing in me that's never developed. It isn't like I had something, then I lost it, and I'm looking for it again. There's parts of me that are missing that never developed in me. And the primary one is compassion. I'm extremely self-centered, more self-centered than I should be for being middle-aged, right? Everybody's self-centered. There's always a self. And I think what happens going down the spiritual path is the self gets smaller, so there's less self to be centered around, but it never ever fully goes away. We're human, after all. But this compassion, I don't know that I don't have compassion. When I was 37 and I got sober in that house with those kids and that wife, I didn't have an emotional connection to another living human being, and I didn't know that. I didn't know it, but now I've been around a little bit, and I can see I have difficulty with personal relationships. I have difficulty at home with my wife. I have difficulty connecting to people. So compassion is what's missing in me. That's the fifth pillar. And that's what we run into when we run into recovery. When we're new, people just are compassionate with us. Weren't you suspicious of that? I was. I had never experienced that before, right? So what's the mechanism, this spiritual path that you and I are on, that helps us develop that compassion that's missing in us? Sponsorship. As compared to activity, the action, sponsorship. The way I was sponsored, he was very clear to me. The reason he was doing that with me is so that I could do it with others. The most important fifth step that you'll be involved in is the first one you listen to, right? Not the first one you do, but the first one you listen to. That's when everything changes. When you enter my life, it disrupts everything. Is it inconvenient? Absolutely, right? Evidently, I need to be inconvenienced to change. If you leave up to me what I will and won't do, I'll never consciously put myself in an uncomfortable position. And in the 40 years that I've been around, I've been uncomfortable a lot. I've just gotten used to it. It's like, you know, and one of the most spiritual things you'll ever hear is get in the car. Get in the car. Well, where are we going? What do you care? What's on your social agenda? You know, get in the car. And I got in the car. I got in the car. And in a year sober, I started sponsoring people. And I've done that ever since. Yes, I speak around and do stuff, but if I'm not doing that work, what have I got to talk about? Really? You know, it's just Bill doing theater somewhere. Sponsorship. You entered my life and it disrupted everything. I started caring about you. There's an interesting thing in the 12-step programs that we're involved in. We will be patient and tolerant with people because we identify. And if for some reason the hardest place we have to actually carry that into is in our home life, maybe in our work life. But in CA or AA or whatever A you're in, it's very compassionate. We're very tolerant, very understanding. We begin to exercise that muscle. And when I sit down with you like my sponsor did with me and I'm reading the book with you and we're sharing our lives together, you cannot not be impacted by that. When somebody comes to you and bears their soul to you, that's a life-changing experience. That's true intimacy, not sex. I'm talking about intimacy, being close to other human beings. And that happened for me in the program I was in, and I slowly began to bring it into my personal life, in my work life, and my life began to get better. So compassion is the final pillar. That's what we're working towards. That's what we end up with. And you'll hear all the mystics talk about it. It's all about getting out of self, not more into it. There are people around that are doing inventory after inventory after inventory after inventory. Aren't you tired of yourself yet? This is not a self-help program. Do we get helped? Yes. We get helped by helping others. You ever heard somebody say, you've been your own worst enemy, put yourself at the top of the amends list? That'll pretty much kill you, you know? If I work on loving myself, I'll never get around to you, right? So I'll leave you with this final thought. They say here you got to give it away to keep it. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. I think you have to give it away to get it. To get what you're looking for, you have to give it away to get it. Then you've got it. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you.